When the festival ended and the drums fell silent, the village returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing was normal again for Ode. Morning came as it always had, with the rooster's cry and the smell of damp earth rising from the ground. The sun climbed slowly into the sky, stretching its light across the red paths and mud houses. Women stepped out with bows balanced on their heads. Men sharpened tools for the day's work. Children laughed as they chased one another between compounds. Life moved on. Ade did not. She lay on her mat with her back turned to the door, listening to the world continue without her. The room felt smaller than it ever had, as though the walls were slowly closing in. The mirror at the corner of the room was covered with cloth, but even without seeing her reflection, Ade felt its presence, waiting patiently like a cruel witness. Her face burned, not with pain anymore, but with memory. She remembered how the crowd had looked at her before the burning began. She remembered the whispers, the pointing fingers, the sudden fear. She remembered the way admiration had turned into rejection in a single moment. Each memory pressed on her chest until breathing became difficult. Her mother entered quietly, carrying a bowl of warm porridge. She placed it gently beside Ode and sat down without a word. For a long time, she said nothing, knowing that some wounds rejected comfort. "My daughter," she finally whispered, "you must eat." Ade did not move. "You have not eaten since yesterday." Silence. Her mother reached out and touched Ade's shoulder. Ade flinched and pulled away. "Please," Ode said weakly. "Let me be." The words pierced her mother's heart, but she obeyed. She rose slowly and left the room, wiping tears from her eyes. Outside, the women of the village gathered as they often did, pretending to discuss ordinary matters while their eyes drifted toward Ade's compound. "Have you seen her today?" One woman asked. "No," another replied. "They say she no longer shows her face." A third said. "Maybe the spirits have finally humbled her." Their laughter was low, but sharp. Ode heard them as she approached with a small basket of herbs. Her hands tightened around the handle, but she kept walking. She had learned that arguing with gossip was like wrestling smoke. It left you tired and empty-handed. She entered Ade's room quietly and placed the basket down. "Ode," she said softly. Ode did not respond. Ode sat beside her and began to sort the herbs, crushing some gently between her fingers to release their scent. The room filled with a calm, earthy smell. "I brought leaves that cool the skin," Ode said. "They may help." Ade turned her face slightly, enough for Ode to see the scars more clearly. They were not as angry as before, but they were unmistakable. Ode swallowed hard. "Thank you," Ode whispered. Ode gently washed Ade's face, her movements slow and careful. She did not rush. She did not sigh. She treated Ade's face as something precious, not ruined. As she walked, Ode's thoughts wandered to the night she swapped the pomade. She knew the truth. She knew who had done this, yet fear chained her tongue. Outside, Aku and Cute walked together, their laughter ringing too loudly for a quiet morning. "Have you heard?" Aku said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "They say the city man visited Ode again yesterday." Cute stopped walking. "You're lying." "I am not." Their jealousy hardened. Night fell gently over the village. Lamps flickered to life. In Ade's room, Ode sat awake, staring at the pomade container hidden in her bag. The truth was no longer sleeping, it was waiting. The village did not understand why Sadiq kept returning. In a place where judgment traveled faster than truth, people had already decided what Ade's fate should be. To them, she was a fallen star, once admired, now avoided. Her scars were a warning sign, a reminder that beauty could attract unseen danger. Many believed she should quietly disappear into the background of village life, marry no one, and fade into memory. Sadiq refused that ending. Each morning, he walked the dusty path toward its compound with steady steps, ignoring the stares that followed him. Some villagers whispered openly, others shook their heads, and a few laughed as he passed. But he did not slow down. He had seen cities larger than this village, heard gossip sharper than these whispers, and learned early in life that the loudest voices were rarely the wisest. When he reached its compound, he did not demand entry. He stood outside, greeting her mother respectfully, sometimes leaving small gifts, fruit, cloth, herbs, without expecting gratitude. Ode noticed everything from behind her window. At first, his presence unsettled her. It felt like a mirror she was not ready to face. She feared he would eventually see her the way others did and leave, and that pain would be worse than never having hope at all. Yet day after day, he remained. One afternoon, Odiu found Ode sitting by the doorway. Watching the dust settle after Sadiq had left. You watched him go, Odiu said gently. Ode sighed. I don't understand him. Perhaps he understands you more than you think. Ode shook her head. He does not know what it is like to lose something everyone believed defined you. Odiu looked at her carefully. Maybe he sees what remains after the loss. That evening, Ade's mother spoke words she had been holding back. My daughter, she said, there are people who love the flower, and there are people who love the root. One withers when the flower fades. The other waits for it to bloom again. Ade said nothing, but the words stayed with her long after night fell. While Sadiq's presence stirred curiosity and hope, it also stirred something darker. Aku and Kud watched everything, from the shadows of compounds, from behind market stalls, from whispered conversations. They observed the slow change taking place. Ade was no longer invisible. People spoke her name again, not with admiration, but with interest, and interest was dangerous. She should be broken, Kud said one evening, pacing angrily. Why does she still draw attention? Oku's jaw tightened. Because she is not finished. That thought terrified them. They had believed the burning would end everything. They had believed pain would erase its place in the world. Instead, it had stripped away shallow admiration and revealed something stronger, endurance. We must be careful, Oku said. The village is watching now. Kud stopped pacing. Then we make the village stop watching. The next day, rumors began to spread again. This time, they were quieter, more carefully crafted. People whispered that Ade's scars were not healing because she had offended the spirits. Others said Sadiq was under a spell. Some suggested Ade planned to bring misfortune upon the village. The whispers reached Ade like distant thunder. She withdrew again. Sadiq noticed immediately. When he came and found the compound unusually quiet, he asked Odiu what was wrong. Odiu hesitated, then told him everything. Sadiq listened without interruption. Fear always disguises itself as wisdom, he said when she finished. That evening, Sadiq requested to speak before the elders. The village gathered under the old tree. I have heard the stories being told about Ode, Sadiq said. And I wish to say this, Ode is neither cursed nor dangerous. The silence that followed was heavy. Aku and Kud watched from the crowd. That night, Odiu could not sleep. She studied the pomade container again. The time was coming. A few days later, Ode fell ill. At first, it was weakness. Then dizziness. Aku and Kud arrived pretending concern. She must be cleansed, Aku said softly. Odiu watched closely. That night, Odiu followed Aku's path and found the discarded pouch. Inside was the same powder. By morning, Odiu had made her decision. She went to Sadiq. She told him everything. The pomade, the jealousy, the poison. This must end, Sadiq said. and for the first time, Ade was not alone in the fight for her truth. The sickness that settled over Ade did not announce itself loudly, it crept in like a thief, silent and patient. At first, she only felt tired. The kind of tiredness that sleep could not cure. Her limbs grew heavy, her appetite faded, and even speaking felt like effort. By the third day, she could barely rise from her mat without help. Her mother's worry deepened into fear. "She is fading," she whispered to Odiu one night, her voice trembling. This is not the sickness of ordinary days. Odiu knew she was right, the herbs she used were not working the way they should. Ade's skin felt cold at times, warm at others. Her eyes, once bright even in sadness, now looked distant, as if she were drifting somewhere beyond reach. And through it all, Oku and Kyud came faithfully. Too faithfully. They arrived every morning with forced concern, asking questions they already knew the answers to, touching Ade's hands with false gentleness, offering food and drinks they insisted were meant to help. Odiu watched every movement, every smile. Every glance exchanged when they thought no one was looking. "Let her drink this," Kyud said one afternoon, holding out a cup of dark liquid. "It will strengthen her." Odiu stepped forward immediately. "She cannot take new mixtures without the healer's word." Oku's eyes flashed, but she masked it quickly. "Of course. We only want to help." That night, Odiu poured the liquid away. As Ode weakened, the village grew restless. Some said the spirits were finishing what they had started. Others whispered that Sadiq's presence had angered unseen forces. Fear returned to the village, and fear always searched for someone to blame. Oku and Kyud fed it carefully. They visited elders quietly, planting ideas without accusation. "Perhaps we ignored the signs," Oku would say gently. "Some people carry misfortune unknowingly," Kyud added softly. They never mentioned Ade's name directly, they did not need to. Soon, people began to avoid Ade's compound again. Children were warned not to go near. Even some elders hesitated to visit, afraid of being associated with bad luck. Only Sadiq continued to come. When he saw how weak Ode had become, his calm finally cracked. "This is not natural," he said firmly. "Someone is hurting her." Odiu nodded. "I know." Together, they began to watch. They noticed that Ade's sickness worsened after Oku and Kyud visited. They noticed the strange drinks, the insistence on handling food. They noticed how the two women always arrived together, and always left satisfied. The pattern was clear. What they needed was proof strong enough to silence lies. One evening, Odiu followed Oku again. She waited until darkness covered the village and the moon rose high. Oku slipped away quietly, thinking herself unseen. Odiu moved carefully, keeping distance, her heart pounding with every step. Oku stopped at the edge of the forest. There, hidden among tall grass and twisted roots, sat the same herbalist who had sold them the poison weeks earlier. His eyes were sharp, his face lined with secrets. "You said the powder would be enough," Oku hissed. "It weakens slowly," the man replied. "Not kills quickly." "She must not die yet," Oku said. "She must suffer." Odiu's breath caught. The herbalist reached into a bag and brought out another small pouch. "This one brings confusion. Dreams will mix with reality. People will believe she is losing her mind." Oku smiled. Odiu felt sick. When Oku left, Odiu waited until the forest grew quiet. She crept closer and marked the place carefully, memorizing every tree, every stone. The truth was growing thick. Back at the compound, Ade drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams tangled and frightening. She saw fire, mirrors, faces laughing without mouths. Sometimes she woke screaming, calling names from childhood. Sadiq stayed beside her through the nights, sitting on a stool, refusing to leave. "You are safe," he whispered whenever she stirred. "You are not alone." Ade barely heard him. But something in his voice anchored her. In moments of clarity, she wondered why he stayed. "Why do you care?" she asked weakly one night. Sadiq took her hand gently. "Because strength is not loud. It is quiet. And I recognize it." Tears slid from Ade's eyes. Odiu could no longer wait. She gathered what she could, the discarded pouches, the swapped pomade, the markings of the herbalist's place. She knew the risk. Accusing friends without full support could turn the village against her, but silence was killing Ode. She went to the chief elder under cover of dawn. She told him everything. At first, he doubted. Then she showed him the evidence. The elder's face darkened. "This matter is deeper than jealousy," he said. "It is evil." They agreed to act carefully. Oku and Kyud must be caught, not accused. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Oku arrived one morning carrying another bowl of food. This time, the elder, disguised as an ordinary visitor, was present. He watched as Oku hesitated, glanced around, and slipped something into the bowl. The act was small. But it was enough. The elder stood. "What did you add?" he demanded. Oku froze. The silence shattered. Q tried to speak, but words failed her. Villagers gathered. Fear turned into attention. Attention turned into truth. Oku fell to her knees first. Q followed. Their confession spilled out, broken, desperate, ugly. The pomade. The jealousy, the poison. The lies. The village gasped. Ade lay weak but conscious, tears sliding silently down her face, not from pain, but from betrayal finally named. Odiu stood tall. Sadiq moved closer to Ode. The evil that hid behind smiles had finally been dragged into the light, but justice had not yet spoken. And healing had only begun. The village awoke to a strange quiet the morning after Oku and Kyud's confessions. People whispered among themselves, unsure whether to feel relief, shame, or anger. The air smelled of dust and fear, mixed with the faint scent of smoke from the fires used to purify the compounds and homes of the guilty. Its mother sat at the doorway of their compound, her hands folded on her knees, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was proud of her daughter's endurance, but the pain Ade had endured weighed heavily on her heart. Odiu moved quietly beside her. "We must take care of her now," Odiu said softly. "She has been through more than any young woman should endure." "Yes," her mother whispered. "And yet she is still here. Stronger than they ever imagined." Ade remained in her room, her body finally recovering from the worst of the poison, but her mind still restless from nights filled with terrifying dreams. She stared at the ceiling, her scarred face reflected in the dim light of the morning. Slowly, she began to understand that she was no longer the same girl the village had first admired. Something inside her had changed, her resilience had been forged in fire, and it was unbreakable. Meanwhile, Sadiq worked with the elders to ensure the village's safety and its protection. The elders, moved by Odiu's courage and the evidence she presented, decreed that Oku and Kyud must face public accountability. When the women were brought before the village, their faces flushed with shame. The people who had once admired Ode now saw the truth. They realized that envy and jealousy, not Ode herself, had caused pain and suffering. The chief elder spoke with authority. "The actions of Oku and Kyud have threatened the peace of this village. They sought to harm one of our own out of jealousy and selfishness. Justice demands acknowledgement, repentance, and restitution." Oku and Kyud lowered their heads, unable to meet the eyes of anyone in the crowd. Ade's mother stepped forward. Placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder, "Let this be a lesson to all," she said, her voice steady. "No act of envy should destroy what is good and pure. And no one should suffer because others cannot bear the light that shines in them." After the public reckoning, life slowly began to return to normal. Ade's days were filled with gentle care, her body mending, her spirit growing stronger. Sadiq continued to visit, offering friendship and companionship. Their conversations grew longer, and laughter began to return to the compound, echoing in a space that had once been filled with fear. Ode began to trust again. She learned to see Sadiq not as someone who would leave, but as someone whose presence reminded her of safety, hope, and love. One afternoon, while walking through the village with Odiu, she noticed the same young men who had once stared at her in admiration now greeting her with respect rather than fear or envy. Mothers nodded in recognition of her strength. The whispers had changed, they now spoke of courage, resilience, and the triumph of truth. Ode smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, but the story was not yet complete. There were still questions about what Sadiq saw in her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sadiq approached her in the courtyard. "I need to ask you something," he said, his voice calm but serious. Ade looked up from the flowers she was arranging. "Ask," she replied cautiously. "Why did you allow yourself to be surrounded by fear and silence for so long?" Ade hesitated. I did not know any other way. I thought endurance was enough. I thought survival was all I could manage." Sadiq smiled faintly. "Endurance is only part of the story. Courage, and the willingness to accept help, makes a person truly strong. You have both." Ade felt warmth spread through her chest. She realized that for the first time in months, she could imagine a future not shadowed by betrayal or envy. It was during this time that the final piece of the puzzle revealed itself. Odiu, ever vigilant, had kept track of Oku and Cute's activities even after their confessions. One day, Sadiq proposed. It was simple, honest, and without ceremony. "I have seen your strength, your courage, and your heart," he said. "I want to stand beside you, not because of beauty or fear, but because of who you are." Tears glistened in Ade's eyes. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for the face she once had, but for the woman she had become. She accepted. The wedding was a joyful celebration, bringing together the entire village, including elders, friends, and family. Music filled the air, dancers twirled gracefully, and colors of every hue decorated the compounds. Ode walked beside Sadiq, her hand in his, her heart light. Odiu stood nearby, smiling, proud of the woman her friend had become. Aku and Cute were present but subdued, a reminder of envy's consequences.